suffering in Gaza must end. We have been constantly calling for immediate release of hostages. However, military operations for the release of hostages, leaving hundreds of civilians killed and injured like the one in Nusayrat refugee camp on Saturday, cannot be the new normal. The principles of international humanitarian law and human rights law apply to hostage rescue operations as well. The denial of aid to civilians, including women, children, persons with disabilities, and older persons. Humanitarian and UN personnel killed. UN premises targeted. Hospitals sieged. Children's limbs amputated without anesthesia. Women giving birth without appropriate assistance. Mass graves. Civilian areas in Gaza and in Israel targeted, attacked, and destroyed. None of this should be taking place. Mr. President, photos of children, some of them born during this war, dying because of malnutrition, will go down in history as one of the conflicts this Council should have prevented. It is for these reasons that we once again call for an immediate ceasefire. This is the first step towards achieving a comprehensive solution. It is for this reason we support an international peace conference under the auspices of the United Nations. It is for these reasons that we underscore our commitment to the two-state solution based on pre-1967 borders and the unification of Gaza Strip with the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, under the Palestinian Authority. Everyone has their part to play, and every step contributes to the peace process. In our opinion, only two sovereign and equal states can make this peace happen. It is for that reason that my country last week recognized Palestine as an independent and sovereign state, and we call on others to follow suit. So that the future generations in Israel and Palestine can live side by side in peace, security, and prosperity. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, President. The conflicts in Gaza have lasted over 8 months, killing more than 37,000 Palestinian people and leaving over 2 million people in unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. Israel's massive offensive against Rafah and its attack on Nusayrat refugee camp over the past 2 days have caused additional major casualties. Facing such a human tragedy, the international community reached overwhelming agreement long ago. Both the GAESS and the Security Council have adopted multiple resolutions which contain clear-cut provisions, namely immediate, unconditional, and lasting ceasefire, immediate release of all hostages and Palestinian detainees, guarantee for smooth, unimpeded, and adequate humanitarian relief into Gaza and its timely delivery to those in need, protection of civilians, and strict accountability for acts in Gaza in breach of international humanitarian law. The U.S. leader announced on May 31st the Gaza ceasefire proposal. Then, the U.S. submitted a draft resolution to the Security Council, urging both Israel and Hamas to accept the ceasefire proposal and fully implement its terms without delay and without condition. By common sense, if the parties concerned reach agreement first, which is then followed by the Council's action of endorsement, such a course of action would be more appropriate. However, if the Council's action is conducive to reaching agreement and conducive to immediate realization of permanent ceasefire, such an action would still be a positive one. Based on the views of the Council members, the sponsor has revised the draft resolution. However, the draft is still ambiguous in many aspects. We still have valid concerns on whether the parties concerned will accept the ceasefire proposal and whether the three-phase arrangement can be carried out smoothly. Meanwhile, we have noted that the proposal says if the negotiations take longer than 6 weeks for phase 1, the ceasefire will still continue as long as negotiations continue, and relevant parties are ready to work to ensure negotiations keep going until all the agreements are reached. The sponsor has also indicated that Israel has accepted the ceasefire proposal. Our understanding is that as long as ceasefire is achieved, no more fighting will be launched again. Immediate realization of permanent ceasefire, this has been the strong appeal of China and the Council members for months, and this has been the most pressing aspiration of Gaza civilians in deep sufferings. From the perspective of the urgent need to stop more killing and to alleviate humanitarian catastrophe, China voted in favor. President, all Council resolutions are legally binding. The resolution just adopted is equally binding as Council Resolution 2712, 2720, and 2728. All of them should be implemented in a comprehensive and effective manner. We hope that the sponsor will work sincerely in an impartial and responsible manner to push for immediate realization of permanent ceasefire. China will work with all parties to push for early stop of fighting in Gaza and bring the Palestinian-Israeli question back to the right track of the two-state solution as early as possible. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative.
As early as possible. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President. 247 days have passed since Hamas's horrific attack on Israel, and since Israel launched a war on Gaza unprecedented in scale and impact. The death toll from this war is staggering, with thousands of Palestinians killed in barbaric ways. The humanitarian situation is catastrophic, and Gaza has been made an abyss of destruction. Despite the adoption of resolutions both by this Council and the General Assembly calling inter alia for the protection of civilians and a ceasefire, the war has persisted, with civilians continuing to face grave danger. Today, Guyana voted in favor of the resolution tabled by the United States because we viewed it as another valuable contribution, this time by the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, towards achieving the end of the war and bringing relief to the hundreds of thousands of civilians suffering in Gaza and to the Israeli hostages and their families. Specifically, Guyana notes that the ceasefire proposal with which the resolution treats aligns in several ways with previous resolutions adopted by this Council. It is still critical, however, for the Security Council, in keeping with its primary responsibility under the Charter for the maintenance of international peace and security, to redouble efforts towards the urgent achievement of a ceasefire, the release of all hostages in Gaza and of Palestinians illegally detained, and for a surge in humanitarian assistance in Gaza. These are the steps needed to bring immediate relief to civilians being ravaged by Israel's 8-month-old war on Gaza. These steps are also foundational to the reconstruction of Gaza and, more broadly, to reviving the vision of the two-state solution, which is the only just and comprehensive resolution of the Palestinian question. Mr. President, as Guyana supported the resolution adopted today, we wish to reflect on 3 key elements not included in this resolution, but warranting continued attention. First, this resolution was considered in the context of the dire humanitarian situation in Gaza, one of the most egregious consequences of the war. For Guyana, the ceasefire proposal is logically seen as a response to, inter alia, the unprecedented humanitarian situation in Gaza. Second, we reiterate our demand for adherence to international law, including international humanitarian law. As Guyana has consistently pointed out, this war is characterized by the violation of international law with seeming impunity. In this context, it is therefore important to continuously emphasize the parties' obligations to strictly comply with international law. The Security Council should be the lead voice in this regard. Third and final, as we welcome the proposal for a ceasefire, the Council itself must continue to unequivocally demand a permanent ceasefire. Mr. President, in closing, Guyana stresses that this Council's responsibility for achieving a just end to this war is not eliminated by the adoption of this resolution. This Council must continue to work assiduously to bring an end to the war and to ensure accountability for all the atrocities committed during its course. We must also redouble efforts to chart a path towards the swift implementation of the two-state solution. As ever, Guyana is committed to these goals. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Gracias, señor.
Thank you, President. Ecuador once again voted in favor of peace. We supported this draft resolution because we believe that the Council must ensure that its voice is heard in support of a proposal in this sense and that can finally halt the war. This proposal must be accepted by both parties and will put into effect an immediate and total ceasefire. It will allow for the release of the hostages and facilitate the alleviation of the terrible humanitarian situation facing civilians in Gaza. The implementation of all the phases of this proposal will also contemplate the beginning of a reconstruction plan in Gaza and rejects any attempts at demographic or territorial change in the Strip. President, this war began with the terrorist acts of attack of Hamas on the 7th of October. And Ecuador will continue to condemn these attacks, and it continues to cause much pain and suffering. For this reason, my country believes that the proposal on the 31st of May is an opportunity which must be seized to halt the spiral of violence. We must work now to ensure that this is the last war of this long conflict, moving towards a peaceful, negotiated, definitive and just solution for the parties with the existence of two states, Palestine and Israel, upon the basis of the 1967 borders and the relevant resolutions. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Mr. President, Sierra Leone would like to thank the United States for the initiative to work on this resolution. We further acknowledge and support ongoing diplomatic efforts spearheaded by Qatar, Egypt, and the United States aimed at achieving a deal that will bring about tangible results on the ground. It is in anticipation of this result that Sierra Leone voted in favor of the resolution just considered. As we have previously stated in this Council, Sierra Leone shares the view that actions of the Security Council should complement ongoing diplomatic efforts that will bring about a meaningful pact for sustainable peace. While we do not agree to all the elements in the resolution, it is important that as the body responsible for the maintenance of international peace and security, we urge both Israel and Hamas to seize this opportunity to meaningfully engage and commit to an agreement that will lead to a ceasefire, the release of hostages, and exchange of Palestinian prisoners, allow for the effective distribution of humanitarian assistance at scale throughout the Gaza Strip, the reconstruction of Gaza, and actualization of the two-state solution. The recent outcome of Israel's extensive raid in Rafah on 8 June 2024 to release 4 hostages held by Hamas on 7 October 2023 is an indication that until a comprehensive deal is reached by both parties, such operations with devastating consequences for the civilian population will continue. To avoid future catastrophes and put an end to this brutal conflict, Sierra Leone reiterates the need for parties to the conflict to respect and implement all resolutions adopted by this Council, the need for international law to be upheld, and all ICJ orders complied with. It is our sincere hope that parties to the conflict will approach the negotiating table with empathy, flexibility, and careful consideration of the impact of this conflict on the women, children, the elderly, and other vulnerable groups who, since the 7th October 2023, have been victims of their actions. Sierra Leone reiterates its unwavering commitment to this cause until a just and lasting solution is achieved. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
President, the Russian Federation abstained on the draft Security Council resolution prepared by American Council colleagues in support of the proposal of mediators on a ceasefire in Gaza. From the very outset of the military escalation in the Palestinian-Israel conflict, we have consistently and unwaveringly advocated for the imperative for a permanent ceasefire regime, including in order to release hostages and remedy the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. We have always welcomed any diplomatic efforts on the ground that are focused on reconciliation within parameters that suit both sides. At the same time, we have a whole host of questions about the American draft resolution, whereby this Council welcomes some deal, the ultimate outlines of which are not known to anyone, perhaps except the mediators. The information circulating in various open sources are very contradictory. The sponsors of the resolution did not keep the Security Council in the loop of the details of the agreement. We essentially proposed to a cat in a bag. As such, there was no negotiation process. As such, the sponsors brought a variation of a prepared text de facto calling on members of the Security Council against the clock to sign up to it. Hamas is called upon to accept this so-called deal. But still, there is no clarity regarding official agreement from Israel, as is written in the resolution for the deal proposed by President Biden, given the many statements from Israel on the extension of the war until Hamas is completely defeated. So on what specifically has Israel agreed to? Perhaps we'll hear a response to that question today from the Israeli representative. We are convinced that the Security Council should not sign up to agreements with vague parameters and without guarantees not only of their implementation on the ground, but without the slightest clear understanding how the parties themselves, what their attitude is towards it. Essentially, the Council is giving a carte blanche and signing up to this plan with details that they don't have. The 3 parameters and phases, that's not details. From the very beginning of the escalation in Gaza, the Council has adopted 3 resolutions which have remained on paper in terms of implementation. Here, we can add a 4th. This is not something we could call a positive trend. The adoption by the Council of a new document with the contents of which raises a mass of questions, even without a clear demand to parties for an immediate and permanent ceasefire, undermines its authority as the main body for maintenance of international peace and security. We did not wish to block the resolution simply because it, as much as we understand, is supported by the Arab world. However, all of the questions that we have remain, and require a response. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the Republic of Korea. The Republic of Korea has repeatedly expressed its strong support for the diplomatic efforts by relevant countries, including the United States, Egypt, and Qatar, to achieve an immediate ceasefire and release of hostages. The recent airstrikes on refugee camps and the massive operation to rescue hostages, resulting in a large number of civilian casualties, once again exemplify the imperative of finalizing the deal as soon as possible. More hesitation means more fatalities. Today, the Republic of Korea voted in favor of the draft resolution proposed by the U.S., with the sincere hope that it can urgently lead to positive impacts on the ground by pressing both parties, notably Hamas, to accept and implement the terms of the deal. It is also of crucial importance that Israel stays true to its word and remains steadfast to the accepted proposal. No other considerations should be prioritized beyond the lives of innocent people, including Israeli hostages and Palestinian civilians in Gaza. The Republic of Korea hopes that today's adoption of the resolution can lead to a concrete outcome on the ground, including a massive expansion of humanitarian aid. The human suffering due to this conflict is simply intolerable. As President Biden mentioned on May 31st, it is time for this war to end. I now resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Council, from the very first days following Hamas's invasion and brutal massacre on October 7th, Israel's goals have been very clear: to bring all our hostages back home and to dismantle Hamas's capabilities. Israel is committed to these goals: to free all the hostages, to destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, and to ensure that Gaza does not pose a threat to Israel in the future. And as we have echoed numerous times in this very chamber, once these goals are met, the war will end. If Hamas were to release the hostages and turn themselves in, not one more shot needs to be fired. Yet sadly, for the past 8 months, Hamas has refused. 120 hostages are still being held by Hamas in appalling conditions. To this day, Hamas continues firing rockets at Israeli towns and cities and advancing their goal of murdering every Israeli. Members of the Council, it is Hamas that is preventing this war from ending. Hamas and Hamas alone. It is the genocidal jihadists who started this war and who choose to prolong it. Pressure must be applied upon Hamas, and blame must be placed where it belongs, on Hamas terrorists. This Council has adopted 3 resolutions calling for the release of hostages, and each time Hamas has utterly ignored your request. Hamas does not care what the Council has to say, because they have never been held responsible for their crimes by the Council. The pressure on the terrorists should have begun long ago, but it's still not too late. It must begin now. Colleagues, Hamas's refusal to release the hostages through diplomacy has proven that the effort to bring our hostages home must also include military means. And this Saturday was the perfect example of how this can be achieved. As a result of a heroic operation, the IDF rescued 4 hostages from Gaza. These hostages, Noah Argamani, Almog Meir Jan, Andrei Kuzlov, and Shlomi Ziv, were being held in residential buildings by Palestinian families. While the hostages were guarded by terrorists, Gazan civilians were their jailers. These so-called innocent civilians were not only cooperating with the terrorists, but were complicit in their heinous crimes. As the world witnessed on Saturday, it is Israeli soldiers who sacrificed their lives to bring our hostages back home, while Hamas intentionally sacrifices Gazan children to prevent us from rescuing hostages. Israel regrets any harm to civilians, but it must be emphasized that Palestinians who cooperate with Hamas and take part in their war crimes are not uninvolved. This is the reality we face. The loss of life in Gaza is a tragedy, but if you don't put the blame on Hamas, you're advancing their strategy. Colleagues, Israel stands firm on our principles, and they have not changed. We will continue until all of the hostages are returned and until Hamas military and governing capabilities are dismantled. These have been our goals from day one. Just as President Biden stated on May 31st, Hamas must not stay in power. Israel will not let Hamas rearm or regroup so that Gaza can pose a threat to Israel. This is the unwavering goal that we are determined to achieve. This also means that Israel will not engage in meaningless and endless negotiations which can be exploited by Hamas as a means to stall for time. Mr. President, Hamas is solely responsible for this war. They invaded Israel, massacring innocents and taking hundreds hostages. They continue to hold our loved ones in Gaza and continue targeting Israel. They use Gazans as human shields while furthering their genocidal goals. The time has come for this Council to finally hold Hamas accountable, to finally place the blame where it belongs, to finally condemn terror. As the Security Council, it is your duty to apply relentless pressure on Hamas terrorists and ensure that all the hostages return home. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Israel for their statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.
Steak Hesed. Marhaba. Hello. I just arrived from the airport to the Security Council. I was in a mission in the Middle East, and I just got back. I was watching the deliberation of the Security Council in the car. As you all know, the Palestinian leadership welcomed this effort, this step in the right direction, and emphasized that, of course, our position has been always to have an immediate ceasefire to stop the killing of our people. So this resolution is a step in that direction. We are grateful for our brothers in Algeria, whom we worked with them very closely to try to influence the draft resolution to be closer to the objectives of the national rights of the Palestinian people. We succeeded to a certain extent, but of course, we did not succeed in all the things that we wanted. But nevertheless, we welcome this step, and I believe that all the Palestinians welcome this step. We want to have a ceasefire. We want to see the implementation of the objective of stopping the fighting completely and to have humanitarian assistance to our people to the level that they need, to stop the forced transfer, to allow our people to return to the areas where they were pushed out of in all parts of the Gaza Strip, including the north, and to see the Israeli forces outside the Gaza Strip and not a single portion of the Gaza Strip geographically to be taken or under the control of the Israeli occupying forces. And of course, we welcome the reference that the occupied Palestinian territory, including the Gaza Strip, is part and parcel of the land of the State of Palestine, in which this occupation has to end from that occupied land so that we can enjoy freedom, independence, and to live in dignity in our state, the State of Palestine, with East Jerusalem. Now, the burden is on the Israeli side to implement this resolution and to have the ceasefire immediately in place, and also to have the exchange, including the release of Palestinian prisoners, and to make this ceasefire a permanent ceasefire. We want also to thank the effort of the mediators, especially our brothers in Egypt and Qatar, and we hope that we can see the beginning of the process of the implementation of this important resolution, which is a step in the right place, as our Palestinian leadership has declared. I am sure that you will be able to receive all the statements that were released in this connection. We, the Palestinian people, are united in seeing the implementation of this resolution. Thank you very much for being with us.
Will be implemented, given the fact that, despite the fact that the Americans are saying that the Israelis accepted this offer, we still, until now, didn't hear any official Israeli statement in that regard. Did you get any assurance that this will be implemented, that the Israelis did actually agree?
Well, the proof is in the details, and we want to see that, that this resolution to be implemented beginning with the ceasefire, and that this ceasefire to be permanent. We do not want to see the continuation of the fighting. We lost a tremendous amount of people, and we want to see the end of this onslaught against our people. And of course, we will continue pursuing justice and accountability through international mechanisms, legal mechanisms, and here I'm referring to the ICJ and to the ICC, and those who committed one additional massacre in Sairat last Saturday should face justice. Those who were responsible for giving the orders, and executing that order should be brought to justice. In fact, I'm sure that you've seen my letter, which was sent to the Security Council based on instructions from my leadership, telling me to ask for an emergency meeting of the Security Council. So part of the discussion that took place today, especially from many of our friends, and specifically from Algeria, reflects our point of view that those who are committing these atrocities and crimes and genocide against the Palestinian people should face the justice that they deserve, and accountability should be in place. We will continue our efforts in the Security Council, as well as in the General Assembly, in the Human Rights Council, to seek justice for our people, to stop these crimes against our people, and to allow for the conditions to be put in place to rebuild Gaza, to reconstruct it, and to open a path for a peaceful option or road that would lead to the end of the occupation and the independence of the State of Palestine with East Jerusalem as its capital. Abdul Hamid.
Thank you, Ambassador Riyad. We just had an argument with Ambassador Robert Wood. We kept telling him that Hamas had accepted this resolution. The Israelis didn't. And in the resolution, it includes that Israel accepted it. So where we stand now, where is the ball now, in which courts, the Israelis or the Palestinians?
I don't know what he said to you. Just I came immediately to this podium, but I can tell you that that there is readiness from the Palestinian side to engage very seriously to see the implementation of this resolution. The number one item in that resolution is to have a ceasefire, to end this fighting, and we are determined with our friends to make it a long-lasting, permanent ceasefire. So the proof is in the pudding. We will see who are the ones who are interested to see this resolution to become a reality, and those who are obstructing it and they want to continue the war of genocide against our people.
But in reality, you can't control what Hamas is going to do. So we hope that Hamas is going to implement it too. So what will be your position if Hamas doesn't respect the ceasefire?
Well, you're dealing with hypothetical issues. I represent all the Palestinian people at the United Nations. I did not hear any Palestinian saying anything other than welcoming this resolution and readiness and willingness to engage in the process of its implementation. So therefore, the basis of your question is not sound. Those who are potentially going to not honor and respect this resolution is the Israeli side. So therefore, let's watch closely whether we will see a beginning of process for serious implementation of this resolution, or we will see one side that will try to find any excuse in order not to meet the commitment that this resolution requires from Israel. And also, I want to bring to your attention the representative of Israel, whom I understand will not be the representative of Israel soon, cursed everyone in the General Assembly, in the Security Council, in all parts of the UN, rebelling against the Charter of the UN, rebelling against Security Council resolutions, rebelling against decisions by the ICJ about provisional measures to take place to stop the killing of the Palestinian people, not to storm Rafah. So judge them by what they say and what they do. Don't try to look for others who are not violating international law and resolutions of the Security Council. At any rate, the few days to come would be important days for all of us to watch. Anybody wants to ask me a question in Arabic? Ambassador,
I wish I speak Arabic.
Okay.
The question is, everybody agrees to, everybody approved this resolution, but what do you think should be the first step? And do you think it should come from Hamas or from Israel? And what do you think about that?
Well, let's see that the parties, as Abdul Hamid said, you know, that the Palestinian side is saying that they welcome the resolution and they are ready and willing to engage in a process with the mediators in order, you know, to see the implementation of this resolution, starting with immediate ceasefire to be put in place. So we will see what the other side, who is not articulating themselves with such clarity yet, we will see how they behave, and based on that, you will make your judgment, and based on that, the Security Council should make sure that its resolution has to be implemented. Thank you very much.